Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is ATS Fully Engaged on the Rocks, or ATSFE on the Rocks. This is your one of your hosts, Tony. I have Mitch and Evan. How's it going?
Well,
it is going well.
Good. So we're going to do a hot take. So this is kind of
Talking about ATS?
that's right.
Talk about ATS. We're going to do a hot take on the new EVO rules that have been released. They've got 2 modules out. They have the Vogel or Bust, and then they have, of course, I don't have it written down. I've got it. Hedgerows or Bust. That's what it is. I've got it right here. I just had to look at it.
It's
the
Busty series.
It's the Busty.
The Busty series.
You know, it seems like they do the starter games that way too, as well. So that's another topic for another day on that. But so what we're going to do is we're going to go through a good, badly. Yeah, I can speak. Good, bad, ugly, and nitpicky. But since we're on the rocks, let's find out what we're drinking. Mitch, what you drinking tonight?
I went with a classic Manhattan with some Woodford Reserve.
Oh, nice.
I did make
that was almost what I drank.
What's that, Evan?
Yep.
Oh, well, that's what I would have made, but I'm not actually at home. I'm not actually at home, so I'm at family's place. So yes, digging through the liquor cabinet, and I decided to not attempt to make a cocktail. So I'm just drinking straight whiskey, which feels very appropriate for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I love it.
And I am drinking a Sierra Nevada Hazy IPA Summer Surge.
Oh, you really like those hazy IPAs?
I love the hazy IPAs. Yes, the hoppiness goes away and they become more citrus, and I think that's why I like the hazy ones. So
cool.
I'm not a big just IPA, but you make it hazy, it's got enough citrus all of a sudden that I really do enjoy those. So
yeah.
So with that, so let's go ahead. Let's start with the good. I always want to start on a positive note. I always do that in my classes. I always give something positive to start off with because I teach history, so that's usually not a positive thing.
Wow.
Or there's usually some sort of negative thing in there. So let's start off with a positive note. And then at the end, we'll probably end up with a kind of a positive or kind of an overview of what we're thinking. So, you know what? Since I'm starting this, I'm going to take a good, and I'm going to go first on this one and probably take it off. So the EVO rules use the percentile die, but even more than just a percentile die, they use 2d10. So you're literally rolling for the percent first die, second die. And looking at the charts, particularly the casualty charts, I really like it. I think it's not as swingy. So, you're looking at, you could easily roll something on a C or with a 1 gunfire factor. I think it's a little bit easier to roll than rolling like a 1 or a 2 or something along those lines. So I really do like the idea of using 2d10, getting a percentile off of that. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Evan.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say I really like the D1. I like the trend towards the D100. Kind of like what you were saying, Tony. Is so a D10. So dice have no memory, right? There's no curve on a D10. You have the same chance to roll a 1 as you do a 9, right, or a 10. D100, obviously, there's not necessarily a curve, but I feel like you can have a much wider range of results. And to your case in point on the GF1. It's a 25% chance on the new chart as opposed to probably, whatever the old one was, I think a 3 or 2. So that would have been a 30% or 20%. I can't remember what the actual chart was. I don't have it up. But so I like the fact that you can get a little bit more nuance. You can spread the results out across that. So
for sure. So Evan, what's your good on that one?
Well, I have nothing to add to that.
No, okay. Sorry. What do you got to add? So what? No, seriously.
No, I didn't have anything to add. That was
we covered it for him.
Yeah. So we're doing good right now. Yeah. So
exactly. I don't want to do more work than I have to. So you guys keep it up.
All right. Well, Evan, go with the next good then.
Yep.
Oh, the next good. All right. Let's see here. I mean, there's a lot of little stuff that I thought was interesting, just like little changes that I was like, oh, okay. you want to give just like one tiny one, or should I give a couple tiny ones, or I don't know if I have like a big one that I'm like.
Well, see, my thought was just to go around. Like I was picking little tiny things, probably along the lines of you're talking about. Of here's something that I pulled out of the rules that I really like, that I think is good. So,
okay, perfect. All right, let's give a shout out to Joe F. He was talking about, he brought up foxholes the other day on the Discord channel, and he's ex-military. He's probably dug a lot of foxholes in his time, and and he's like, this doesn't feel right. Why do I give a +1? And it's like it's not even as good as a wooden building, and wooden buildings can't even stop a 9mm. That was his words, not mine.
Right.
And so yeah, so that was a happy change to kind of see that had been anticipated. So now I believe it's still just +1 for direct gunfire, but it's +3 for against HPT, indirect fire, and all that good stuff. Yeah, so I thought that was a cool little change.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that discussion on Discord. And so, listeners, by the way, if you don't know, there's an ATS Discord channel. Lots of good conversations on there. Running the gamut from not just ATS, but there's some EVO content. There's GWATS, the Great War ATS, the CWATS, the Civil War ATS, the tournament being run on there. Just a lot of group of ATS players who are talking about ATS. So it's pretty cool. So check it out. You can if you need an invite, just email us atsfullyengaged@gmail.com. We can send you an invite. But I was going to say, I remember that conversation. It was very interesting. The difference between foxholes and improved foxholes. That's not a game thing, right? But trying to make it a game thing, I thought that was a pretty interesting discussion. Because then you get into, well, what's a hedgehog, and what's the difference between a foxhole and an improved position and a hedgehog and all this. And
I just looked at train effects, and of course, Evan, it's a +10 and a +30. Now,
excuse me, I haven't converted yet.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so they actually have separate for foxholes and for hedgehogs. They actually have separate ones. And so, for instance, the foxholes +10 direct, and then versus the HPT, it's +30.
Right.
And then hedgehogs, it's +20, +40. So the hedgehogs definitely have a little bit more there.
Now there's no full cover for hedgehogs, which is, and I don't. Okay, so this is maybe too early to bring open cans of worms, but this is one thing that is always at the back of my mind. I'm like, this is an 18-page rule book compared to the 70 odd pages in the 4.XX rule book. So is it because there's not going to be full cover for hedgehogs, or is it because they're not? There's only so many rules you can put in a basic game. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops,
and I think
that kind of thing changes later on.
I was going to say, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, right? For sure.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Jumping the gun.
No. I think it's great. Yeah, I mean, you got to give listeners a reason to hang on, because they don't want to necessarily just listen to us, right? But they might want to hear that part. So.
Yeah. So Mitch, what's the good that you got?
Right. So I started off, I just kind of, when I was going through the rule book, I would just write things down, and so I just started at the beginning and then went through it. So I really like the initiative change. So the side that's marked in a scenario as moving first gets the very first impulse. And so on that, there's no more indirect fire phase. It's straight fire or movement, which I thought was funny. But it's not fire and movement, it's fire or movement. But you can still fire if you move, but we won't get into that. But I like that. So the newer ATS modules all mark the first side, the moving side as the first side. I think, well, maybe I won't say all. Most of them do, right? Although, like I was saying somewhere, I don't remember where, but Tony, you and I have kind of played that way anyway. As whoever's the attacker gets the first impulse, because it just makes sense, right? So this is codifying that, which I like. I also like there's an optional D8 divided by 2 mechanism that player gets a D8 divided by 2, and I forget if you round up or down, doesn't really matter, but that many impulses to start. So you might roll an 8 and get 4. The first 4 impulses are yours, so either fire or move. So I kind of like that kind of cool. And then
it can definitely add to replayability for the scenarios.
Exactly. And then after that, you just roll normally, but there's a new tie mechanic. So before, if you tied, you just rolled again. Now, if you tie, it's whoever had the initiative last keeps it. Done. Move on, right? So I kind of like that.
I agree. I like that one. The ties. There's like an optional ferocious. Then can we talk about other games? I don't know. Is that allowed? For optional ferocious, yes. What people say that's like a kind of a nifty, because it adds a little bit to the decision making about like, man, am I going to get the, in the initiative or not next turn?
Right. Exactly.
But I'm a little scared of the D8, the optional D8 have for round or for impulses. Because I think for big scenarios, I don't think it would change too much. But for like little scenarios or ones that are really close in, if you get, there's a 3 1/8 chance you get the three or more impulses without the other person being able to respond. That could be, and maybe I'm just biased because I've been seeing all these tournament scenarios that are so small and compact and like, you can imagine grabbing some houses and someone getting.
Oh yeah, no. No, I get that absolutely. So, and I think kudos for Critical Hit making that particular rule optional, right? So it's not an effect unless you want it to be in effect. So yeah, for that smaller scenario, you might think, I don't think this is going to work too well on this one, right? No, I absolutely agree with that.
It's interesting what you guys had picked out compared to what I had kind of picked out. Because I added, just to kind of throw these out, was the prone and the upright possibilities. I think that's an interesting add to it as well. It really gives a little bit more maneuverability, some defensiveness, and I think that's kind of an interesting.
So you're lumping that under the good?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd lump that under bad.
You didn't like that?
No. So, well, let me ask you this: why do you like it?
Come on, guys, let's fight!
Let's fight! Dukes up.
So for assaulting scenarios where you're definitely trying to assault, you could move, a couple hexes and then go prone and get the benefits off of laying on the ground, especially if you're the one scenario I'm thinking that could help with is in the Kharkov scenario where the Russians, is it the Russians or the Germans, are in a building and you basically have to rush across an open area to get to them. And I think any type of extra little help, even though it's only a +10, I think it really does add give you a little bit more strategic capabilities.
Yeah.
And might help a little bit. I don't know how much. It'd be interesting to see if it really does.
Right.
And it just, that part I really liked. I thought it gave a little bit to it. Will it get fiddly? Yeah, it could.
Right.
We'll have to see how it plays out. But I can see that being some interesting. Hey,
Well, and I guess that's why. Sorry, Tanya, you weren't finished.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I guess that's why I lumped it in the bad. Is to the fiddliness point, and I'm probably stealing some of Evan's thunder on that one too. But you can get that same effect in the current rules by just saying, while you're moving, you get the assault modifier, but once you stop moving, you're no longer moving, so you're now prone. You know what I mean? So you could get that same effect kind of by just tweaking the existing rules, and now you don't have to worry about this. Well, flip the counter, or don't flip the counter, or if you don't have prone and upright counters, move the marker here or there or whatever. You can just say, you get it. Just like running, you only get a running modifier while you're actually running. After that, it goes to assault movement. So, why don't you just apply that to assault movement? And now if you're not moving, you're prone. Because let's be honest, when you're not moving, and this is World War II, your ass is prone, right? Or taking cover somewhere. You're not just standing around smoking a cigarette waiting to get shot at. So
there are some disadvantages depending on what type of units they are that are prone, that you can't fire heavy weapons if something
right.
And then also the fact that when it comes to the prone and upright, that if you are opportunity fired on, and even if you once you pass the morale, you're automatically stopped and you're put into prone. So at least in that aspect, you're at least covered under that for if somebody else wants to take your spot.
Oh, right. Yeah, I guess all I'm saying is that I don't think you need to have that whole fiddliness. You could do that. You could get to the same effect with just a couple lines of rules. You know what I mean? As opposed to all that other jazz. But anyway.
Yeah. So
Evan, anything to add to that?
I guess.
Go ahead, Evan.
Well, no, Mitch, you didn't actually steal my thunder.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mind fiddliness if it's worth it. we're playing ridiculously detailed war games in the first place. So I'm here for the fiddly. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. My impression was that it's below the resolution of the system. Like you're saying, Mitch, that's something that like you don't know if there's 3 guys over there on that part of the hex and 5 guys over there and how they're distributed. So just determining their like specific body position just seems incredibly incredibly detailed for 50-yard hexes and squads of guys running around. And this is something we can get into a little bit later, but just in general, like that's the kind of thing I would expect if it were to be like a system evolution, to be something really different.
Right.
If they zoomed it in to say 25-yard hexes and fire team, I know there are fire teams, but I mean, thankfully, like the fire team, the basic.
Well,
I don't know if there are fire counters in modules.
Almost like what the rifleman version was originally trying to do, was get down to that much more granular level of detail, I think. And I didn't own any of those products. That's all I say, right? But then that kind of got abandoned, and now there's this EVO hybrid, I guess. So,
well, I think rifleman was supposed to be kind of like the well, you called it. I think you summed it up. You put it really well. You said that it was like the alpha, and Rifleman's the alpha, and Evo's the beta version.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and it'd be interesting to see like having a single man counter game. I've never played one, but I'd like to. Yeah, but that's the kind of thing I think where having prone and upright and facing would make all the sense in the world.
Twilight 2000.
That's one of those things also that.
I was just gonna say, Twilight 2000 had a man-to-man combat. The role-playing game had they put out a man-to-man combat. It's basically fire teams and single-man counters. And I can't remember if they did prone and upright. It's been a long time since I've seen that game, but I should pull that out and take a look at it. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't remember what I was gonna say. I think that's one of the things too. Is when you play it, I think when we play it, that's it'll be clear too. If it's like. Yeah, okay, maybe we were wrong. Or Tony was right, this makes sense, and we were wrong, or vice versa.
Right.
But anyways, who's up next? Something good.
Well, go ahead. Whoever wants to jump up with anything else good that they want to add.
Well, I think, did we do the round of good? Or we on? And we did one.
We did kind of a round of good, and I was just kind of throwing something out that I thought was interesting.
Right. Hey, your round of good bled into my one round of bad. So do you want to do that? And then
let's go ahead and do that. Evan, why don't you tell me something that you found bad about this?
Man, I mean,
Hey, to be clear, I think bad just means we disliked it, right?
Yeah,
or found it lacking. Yeah,
we didn't like it.
I mean, some of them could be bad, but anyway, I'm trying to give Evan time to think.
Oh yeah. I'm not doing a good job of thinking. I mean, I can do something very small that's bad. A lot of the bad, I think, I'm having trouble. There's different things. I look at the rules. I'm like, oh, well, that's good. That fixes that problem, but it creates this other issue. So I'm having trouble categorizing some of the things some of the observations I made into. Oh yeah, this is bad for sure, or this is great. A lot of them fall in like the kind of like, ugh, this is good and bad combo. But we'll go with one for sure that I thought was not good. Was bad. Barbed wire works very strangely now. It has an up position and under position, or on top and under, like a hedgehog or a foxhole or whatever. Yeah, which I guess is okay. Yeah, but the problem is it doesn't slow your movement at all. So if you just go on top of it and just walk over it, there's no penalty at all. You just enter the hex normally, and there's like a -10 bonus against you for any attacks for gun.
And you don't have to stop moving. So I will confess, I didn't read any of the terrain-based stuff because I was concentrating on other pieces. So you don't have to stop moving at all when you're under the wire?
No. And you can go, you can go under by crawling under it, but then it's but you're just avoiding that -10 penalty or bonus, but depending on however
you want to look at it, right?
But which I can. Maybe everyone's carrying around wire cutters in this model of the game, which that's fine. But it just seemed like a very like it doesn't do anything almost if no one's gonna op fire. Although on the other hand, this version of the game, EVO, seems to be much more about op firing and much less because of the way the penalty or the bonuses work against moving guys. You don't get bonuses against people who have stopped, only against people who are in the process of moving. So only opportunity fire. So I think we're a lot more opportunity fire, a lot less direct fire, at least against personnel.
Right.
So maybe it works out with that.
Although it just seems weird. I mean, why would you put wire down anyway then? But sorry, whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
That's
Tony.
why it's under the bad.
Well,
Right.
my biggest thing is kind of more of a generalization. It's like trying to figure out 2014 to the new rules. So it's kind of more like okay, we have new rules now. How hard is it? And it's different enough that, I mean, I even mentioned, I'm like, hey, there's no indirect fire segment anymore. And it's like, okay. So just kind of converting from the 2014 to the EVO, because they have changed enough where there is a big enough difference. Like going from 3 to 4 wasn't, there were some changes, but it didn't seem to be that big of a change. But going from, 4.xx to this is definitely going to be a big difference. So that was kind of my thing, just like trying to convert. Okay, in this one we did it this way, which I'm finally getting good with the 4.xx rules, and now we're like going to start changing them. So that's but I do see, as Evan said, I do see some of the issues that I was like, oh, this, and to be honest with you, and I'll get this at the end, I'm going to leave a little cliffhanger out there, is about the melee attacks, the melee, or however it's pronounced.
Melee. I don't know. Pick your pronunciation. French is a dead language anyway.
But that was my bad. It's just, hey, how hard is it going to be? Is it going to be hard for us to really convert over, or is he going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, this wasn't good enough. This didn't work, so we're going to scrap it all again. That's kind of I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because I wasn't quite sure if these were add-on rules or replacements, or where the line was drawn on some. You know what I mean? So, and I'll talk about it a little bit more with another one of the bads. But yeah, it was just kind of, it's this weird hybrid mix of things, and sometimes it refers you back to, do it the way you're supposed to do, and then do this EVO thing. I'm like, okay, but that's not really well explained.
Yeah, that was definitely.
It definitely has an unfinished feel to it.
Yeah.
Like some stuff was just ported right over.
Yep.
Some stuff was rewritten or retyped up, but you can't tell if it's like the wording is supposed to be different, or because the rule is different, or because you're just like typing it up from memory. And, I just Mitch kind of mentioned that with respect to assault fire, I think. But like for example, in the rules, it's now called rushing instead of running, but it mentions it's also called running. You're like, well, which is it? Why does it matter?
Right.
So, yeah, I'm done. I got nothing. But
all right.
Well, I mean,
so let's move on to an ugly.
Mitch, I mentioned to you today that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, just someone had mentioned to me that like the whole point of the EVO, and I guess Rifleman as well, was that it was supposed to be kind of this like testing ground for figuring out new rules and trying out new things. Now, like some of the stuff we're talking about, it's not like we don't think the 4X rules are perfect. There's some things we'd house rule if we could, if we were in charge of critical hit.
Sure.
But it's hard to know, this like at what point is this going to be like stamped done. That it definitely doesn't feel like we're there yet. But how far away in the future is that?
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say that so that was one of my biggest ugly was. So I mean, like the rules, and Tony, you kind of already alluded to this. The rules contain references to +1 or -1 when they should be +10 or -10, right? Which also adds the confusion of, so am I supposed to resolve this using the ATS 4.x rules, or am I supposed to use the EVO rules? Because I'm not quite sure, right? And then there are just rules in the EVO rules that no longer apply. So you're left wondering, well, you just told me. So for instance, personnel facing was left in the rules, but there's a rule about, you got to pay movement point cost to change your facing. But then in the rule before that, it says, but person will have no facing anymore. I'm like, okay, well, why did you not take that out of the rules? So, I mean, basically, at the end of the day, it's ugly because I think you're paying for the privilege of playtesting and proofing these rules, and I'm not sure I'm down with that, right?
Yeah, and well, that's where I was going with my ugly, is just the rules not being correct. You know, it says for combat, it says roll 1d10. Well, you no longer roll 1d10 on the casualty table. You roll 2. So, yeah, it's that's where that kind of that ugly is. It's like, yeah, it looks like it got kind of thrown out, or they changed it after the fact, and then but they'd already printed a whole bunch of them. So, I mean, it's nice they sent out a PDF copy, but I still think they didn't quite catch everything on the PDF copy as well.
No.
So, but definitely on the ugly side of it, it's just kind of the stuff that shouldn't be there needs to be cleared out before it gets sent out. That's just, yeah, that was my ugly as well. There's rules in there that shouldn't be in there, and everything.
Evan, anything ugly?
I'll do a specific rather than a general ugly. We were talking about this today. Final opportunity fire. I'll just read the rule. Once all eligible desired units have been moved, final opportunity fire may be conducted by the opponent's eligible units against enemy units marked with movement markers. Final opportunity fire does not affect any blah blah blah. So that's just just a fire? Just a fire action? I don't understand, because the whole thing is...
and I get what you're saying in that, and I actually read it a couple times just to see if I could understand it better. And this is the way I understand it. It's kind of one of those things that after all, like, what happens if Mitch is moving into an area and then it's kind of like you kind of forgot, or you didn't realize, oh, hey, I could fire. So now you can do an assault fire to that unit that had moved in. If you had,
but you could do that anyway.
Right, I think that's Evan's point. Is you could do that. That's just a fire action. Why do you need this? Why do you need this final opportunity fire? You just take your action and fire.
So is that part of the sequence of play?
I don't remember if
because I didn't see it in the sequence of play. The only thing
I think it was under somewhere in the fire rules.
There's a sequence of play.
Yeah. Well,
I haven't even seen the sequence of play.
It's buried into the rules, but yeah.
Assumed.
Yeah. Exactly.
The only thing I could think of was the idea was that you're supposed to. So we referenced earlier about how the bonuses against moving units only occur during opportunity fire, and once the units are done moving, they're supposed to be done moving. I thought maybe the final opportunity fire was like, no, if you do this at the very end, you still get those bonuses. But the rules don't say that. That was the only thing I could infer that would make sense to make that that aspect of the rules have any logic to it.
Right.
But yeah, ugly either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, enough ugly. Let's move back around to some good stuff. What do you got, Tony?
Well, I had a nitpicky that goes along with the rules.
Oh, okay.
And it's just kind of a nitpicky thing that I ran into is throwing DRMs before we know what it's used for. So, and my explanation of this is I was reading the prone and the standing rule and the upright rules, because if you're prone, it's a minus or it's a plus 10 on the roll. The only problem is I hadn't got to combat, so I didn't know what that meant. And I just kind of get that, and that's kind of a nitpicky thing that I have a problem when they're like, if they would have said, oh, there'll be modifiers for this, we'll explain that later. I'm like, oh, okay. But, it's like, so it's like you're reading and has a negative, has an effect, minus 10 DRM. Like, well, minus 10 on a D1, D10, D20, what is it? So, and that's just a nitpicky thing that I'm like, you're giving me information. I actually saw a meme the other day, and I don't know if you guys had seen this at all. I was on one of the Facebook pages, and it's saying people reading rules, and it's like Sheldon when he's reading one of the papers from The Big Bang Theory, and he's like, but why? And then you finally flip the page. Oh, that's why. and I kind of felt like that was kind of the way I was reading this. It's like, but why? why? And then I'm like flipping, looking for stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. So I have to go back. So that's just a nitpicky thing on most rules for me is I don't like to know modifiers before I know why they're important. So,
No, I get it.
Minus 10's good or a plus 10's bad. I don't know. That's just a nitpicky thing for me.
Yep.
Wargaming rules books. That's, it's about the most fun you can have.
Yeah, I actually only had one nitpicky thing, and it was why is percentile referred to as 2d10 instead of d100? And I get that you're rolling 2d10, but usually when you see 2d10, you're adding them, not making them into d100. You know what I mean? So I get it. It's just one of those things that it's like, okay, whatever.
Can I use my massive, big, chunky 100-sided die?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that okay? Have they got the rule?
I've got one of those. No, I don't. I used to.
I'll have to buy one of those. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
And see if it changed.
Right. I mean, I played plenty of games that are D100 based.
It just turned.
Oh, I think we lost.
I want to see if a 100 turns into I want to see if a 100-sided die, like if you roll it enough times, if it turns into a sphere. I remember when I was a kid, we would play like Army Men, but we had like a little game. Like this was like the war game. Would do like a 1d6 and you'd use your fingers like to calculate the range. I guess it's sort of more like miniatures, I guess. And you roll for hits and stuff with a d6, and I came up with rules for grenades and flamethrowers and whatever. But we'd play like in the driveway, so it was concrete, and we'd roll the dice on the concrete, and then after a couple months of this, we'd like looking at our dice and be like, man, this dice that looked like a dog.
Oh, jeez.
We rolled it on the concrete so many times.
Yeah, I don't think concrete plays too well with dice, but yeah, it's funny because we used to do that same thing, but we did it in the backyard with dirt. But we'd just take pebbles, and you'd have to flick, or pebbles or marbles, and you'd have to flick the marble, and if you knocked the army man down, he was dead. So
that was the kinetic version.
Super fun.
God, all I had was tiddlywinks. Jeez.
Yeah,
Oh, you're missing out.
All right, ready?
Didn't set the Derby on it?
Yeah. You ready for some good stuff? Focus.
Yeah,
less whiskey, more talk. All right.
I'm gonna run out soon. I'm gonna have a problem.
Uh-oh.
So, kind of the one thing that I really...
All right, I'll throw
it out there.
Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
Oh, okay. Whomever, we're all taking turns. Some of the good stuff, I'll do kind of a general category, was some of the vehicle movement rules I thought were improvement. Some just like minor stuff, the turret covered arc is now specific to vehicles, and I guess that falls more into the broader category of the vehicle rules, and HPTs and all that stuff is much more, ammunition is all much more expanded and detailed. But I thought the turret covered arc change differences between vehicles, I was like, that's kind of neat. But there were some other stuff too. They changed the rules for transporting units, so it's much easier, much faster to load and unload guys. I think in the fourth edition rules, it's very difficult if you're playing like a 6-turn scenario. If you want to load a guy and take him somewhere, that's a multi-turn process, because the vehicle can't move after it picks him up, and the guy the squad can't have moved, and so it's all very slow. So I think that's an improvement, because I don't know if it's more realistic, less realistic, but from a game standpoint, it gives you much more opportunity to make interesting decisions about it.
Yeah, I think the turret thing. I think the turret thing goes back to the D100, right? So now you've got a much broader range. You can actually get a lot more variation. Hey, the M4A1 turret is a plus 27 as opposed to a plus 3 when it moves, or the Panther turret is a plus 15. I'm making that up, right? Because we don't know yet, but you can get a lot more nuance rather than, slow turrets are plus 3, fast, medium turrets are plus 2, and fast turrets are plus 1. Oh, okay, right. So I think that's cool, because I noticed that on the size modifiers too. The Sherman, I think, is a -7 or a +7 or whatever it is to be hit, as opposed to, it's +1 because it's a large target, right?
Yeah, it definitely gives a little bit more range on.
And the one thing I was a little bit you about though was, so you guys know, is Assault Fire still a plus? Well, now it'd be a plus 50 modifier for vehicles. Like a moving vehicle is plus 50 or Assault Fire. I guess I could look it up.
You know, that's so. We're getting back into the bad again because the whole. Well, let me back up. So there's this MHT thing now, the multiple hit table, I think, or whatever it's called, that you can use in the place of, which has new rate of fire rules and all this stuff that you can use in place of an ROF, or I'm sorry, an HPT. But what I wasn't sure was, do you still use the HPT?
The modifier list.
Right there. So there's no modifier list. So you have to go to the HPT. Do you still roll in the HPT to get to the multiple hit table, or how does that work? And I mean, it was just the rules are kind of a hot mess on that right now, in my opinion.
I was having trouble figuring out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just needs to be cleaned up and be very specific. Look, here's how you do a direct fire attack with a vehicle weapon now, because the only way I could figure it out was it looked like you had a choice. You could use the HPT to generate a hit, or you could use this other thing to kind of generate a hit, but you used HPT modifiers, but then had to convert them, to plus 50s or whatever, or what, except that things like size are now plus 7, not plus 10, because so it's like, and I get it, you kind of have to work through it on your own, but again, I bought the product. I don't want to proof the product. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and I think the modifier table is just missing because, I think that's relatively clear. Is that you can. So the model, they changed how the rate of fire works. So units have much higher rate of fire. So if you have too much rate of fire, then you do which I think is how the original Tobruk worked. But anyways,
correct.
So you have, if you want to have a gazillion shots, that way you don't have to roll. Which is smart, because that was a complaint about the original Tobruk, is that some units would have you have to roll 80 dice to resolve all of their shots.
Right.
Which does not sound like a good time.
Yeah.
But
and it's all about the compression of time, right? I mean, so the M4A1 now has an initial rate of fire of 4, an acquired rate of fire of 9. Okay, great. That means so if you use the HPT method, you're gonna have to take 4 shots on the HPT. Right, so that's the way I understand it. Or you can use the new MHT and figure that out, and then you roll. But I think you still roll for each hit, which is weird. So I don't know. But yeah, I think it just needed to be a little bit better explained.
Regardless, there's definitely right. Well, and regardless, there's no HPT modifier.
Right. Correct.
I'm looking at the tables now. Maybe I'm blind.
Yeah, there is no. There's not. So,
they have
right.
done it. There's no,
Not blind. That's good.
Yeah,
right.
And I don't think there's much on the. There's not much out there for the HPT.
Right. Well, so but the MHT very specifically says, because the row you use on the MHT is based on your final HPT modifier. Although it's listed as like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but whatever. So then you use that row, and then that gives you so if your rate of fire is 4 and your HPT die roll to hit was, say, 4, you would look on the 4-shot table on the 0.4 row, and that'll give you percentage ranges for did you hit once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times, right, with a descending. Obviously, the lower you roll, the more shots that actually hit. And then you resolve each shot individually. That's the way I understand it to work. But I kind of had to suss that out of the rules. It's not spelled out that way. And maybe I'm just reading them wrong. I don't know. But
okay, but that makes sense. I mean, there still needs to be an HPT modifier table.
Correct.
But you don't need a separate HPT modifier table for the MHT because you just take the original HPT. Okay,
right. Yeah. And my complaint was it didn't say to do that, right? And I get it. We're big boys. We need to figure that out, but still would have been nice, right?
Mm-hmm. We're big boys with little time on our hands. So.
Exactly. Would you just spoon feed that to me? I mean, I think at the end of the day, I figured out how to do it. It's just, it was a little bit more work than I really wanted to do. So, whatever. Maybe I'm just lazy.
Well,
all right.
All right.
One of the
we're on the good. We're on the.
That was a good that became my bad, so I think we're still in the good.
Yeah. But they really kind of clarified the melee attacks. And for one thing, they took out a ton of the modifiers that was hard to understand anyways. And, we kept going around it. But I think the rules actually clarified a lot. And I could be wrong. I don't know. It happens. But I thought after I read, I totally understood
Tony,
exactly how.
I just want to point out that Evan and I both left that statement alone.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I appreciate that. But I really thought the rules cleared it out a little bit better. So, we always had that who's attacking what, or do we do all? And it says, okay, well, here what's going to happen is the attacker puts out the attackers, and then defender chooses which defenders are going to those attackers. So it's a little bit more on both sides on that one. So I thought that really cleared up. And I love the fact that they really took out a lot of the modifiers that really just, I don't know. I always had confusion on the modifiers. Okay, now was it a gunfire factor or was it this? And I think they really cleared that up because they took a lot out. And I really like the ambush rule part.
Amen. That was in my good list.
Yeah, that thing, I was like, oh, that is sweet. So you guys both roll to see whoever gets the ambush. I really, really like that. I thought that was...
so my only caveat was, on the ambush, my only caveat was, so I like the idea. I don't think it's necessary to switch the roles. I think there were a lot of unnecessary rules about, well, now the ambusher becomes the attacker. I think you could, because it's all simultaneous, technically, except in an ambush, you could have just left it that way, because it doesn't matter who's attacker and who's defender. You're still 2-1 or whatever. So I think there was a lot of unnecessary verbiage, but I like the idea.
Yeah. And I like how they actually clarified the close assaults from personnel on vehicles, and how you actually can, as a personnel unit, take out a vehicle. It's hard.
So Tony, can you? Because that became a bad for me.
Really?
And let me.
It's hard, and it's not really easy to do.
Let me explain to you why. So, on the plus side, you don't have to make a usage check to infiltrate in, right? But on the downside, so you count the number of soldiers. That's direct from the rules. I have no idea what that means. I'm assuming it means stacking points. But the rules say count the number of soldiers in the counter. Yeah. Right? Whatever. I'm sure it's soldier depictions on the counter, but if you're going to write rules, then make them clear, not sloppy. Anyway, but so you have that, and you round down to get the close assault value.
Okay.
You with me?
I get you on that one.
Then, so if you have a single squad that's 3 soldiers, quote unquote, that's 3 stacking points, you have it, and you round down, you have a 1. Right? So to take out the AFV, you have to roll a 1 or less. So here's the problem. You roll 1d10 plus 1d8. What's the minimum roll on a 1d10 plus 1d8, Tony?
A 9.
A 2. 1 plus 1 is 2.
Yeah, 2.
You can't get to 1 if the max you can roll, or minimum you can roll, is a 2. So a single squad can never take out a tank. So I have a little issue with that. And unless I completely misunderstood how it worked. But anyway.
No, and I think that's right. I'd have to check. I'd have to go through it a little bit. But they also said you can't, if this is where continuation movement makes sense. Because if it's continuation moved, you cannot close assault a vehicle.
Oh, I think that's 4.x too.
Is that? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so if it's stopped, you can do it.
Right.
But if it's continued movement, so in that case, like if it really makes, I'd have to. We've only done one close assault on a vehicle once, and I was still learning just basic rules.
Right.
But I don't know. I will have to dig that in a little deeper. But definitely clarifying just the person-to-person, hand-to-hand combat. I think I understood it so much better.
Yeah,
I really did.
Yeah,
it made more sense.
No, I would definitely agree with that.
You guys missed me.
We did. We covered for you though. Nobody would have known if you hadn't said anything.
Oh well, I wanted the people to know the struggle.
That's okay.
The internet struggle.
The struggle is real. That's right.
The struggle's very, very real with the internet. Anyways,
right.
wait. I was curious because that was something I had noticed it kind of surprised me that you can no longer do melee on a moving vehicle.
Well, I think I was telling
into that.
Well, I was telling Tony, I thought that was part of the 4.x rules, is that you could not melee a moving vehicle. That if it was marked continued movement, I could be wrong on that, but
no, it's just half.
Is it just half?
No,
okay. So I don't. I mean, it's one of those things.
No,
that
you
I
can
don't
definitely
do
melee.
often, so
Yeah,
I
just half.
don't pay a whole lot of attention to the rule. So it just halves the gunfire.
You're just a coward. You need to melee more vehicles.
Okay, clearly. So I retract my original statement that it was in the 4.x rules that way.
Well, you said you thought you didn't. Yeah. You weren't 100% on that.
But I mean, even then, I don't know. You should be able to. So what if he's continuing movement? Maybe he's stalling in that hex and he's sitting still. I don't know. So. I think that's one of those below the level of the simulation deals too.
Yeah, the other thing is that depending on how you infiltrate into the hex matters.
Right.
Because if you infiltrate from the back, the bow machine gun can't attack you, but if you come from the firing arc, the bow machine can actually attack you and assault you as well. So you really need to come in either from the flank or from the back.
I thought that was cool.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think they really did a good job with the melee rules. And the vehicle one, I'd have to really dig in a little bit deeper on that part. But I think all in all, they did a much better job of clarifying them. And I think throwing out modifiers that didn't need to be in there.
Right.
So, the more modifiers you get rid of, in some cases they're good. In other cases, it just becomes a modifier, cluster.
Right.
So.
Right, Evan, throw us something good.
I'm up? Oh, man. Okay. All right, well, I'll continue along with the vehicle theme. So this is do I have like a one definitely 100% positive? Here. Okay, we'll move away from the vehicles for a second. One thing, I'll follow Tony's theme, actually, of things that have improved clarity-wise or logic-wise from 4X. The collateral fire rules, I think, are better now. There's no more
I think we're losing them again.
Whatever the modifier. Oh, you can't hear.
No.
Uh-oh, you're losing me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you just kind of keep going in and out.
You could hear me enough to say that no, you couldn't hear me.
You like collateral fire because something.
Yeah, it might.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So before, any better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll struggle through. No, before collateral fire was whatever DRMs there were on the shot, that those were added as shifts or moved as shifts to the and then halved, and it's all.
It was some weird calculation to get there, right? Yeah.
There, because if you have a guy who's assault moving, and the calculation is weird, but on top of that, it just doesn't feel right. It's like, why would the assault movement of that guy affect this other guy who also has an assault movement penalty for it would be both of those penalties would be essentially added to the collateral fire shot, but now that's eliminated. Now I think it's just halved, and the wording is clear too, because it's before it was kind of uncertain if there are two shots in the same hex, do those CF markers get added, or there are two attacks. And now it's just clear that you just add the two, or how many collateral fire markers there, you just add them all together. So that was definitely one area. It was just like, oh yeah, okay, like that feels like how the whole thing should have been.
Right.
This all just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It fixed other problems that existed before. It cleaned up other stuff, and I was just like, all right in the world. And then I kept reading the rule book, and it's not feeling that way. But
yeah, no, I hear you. Tony, give us a good one.
Yeah. All right, who's next?
Oh,
this one good?
I've gone through the list on that one right now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'll go. So I'm not sure. So it's funny because a lot of the good ones are like, I'm not really sure how it's going to play out in practice, but I like the change. So doubled gunfire at point blank range. Hello, ASL.
Right, exactly.
Right, but I think it's the makeup for the fact that there are no more grenade attacks, right? So it's kind of combining, I think, grenade attacks with that, right? I think that's the idea behind it. I don't know. I'm making that up. I'm assuming that's the reason why you're doubling your firepower at point blank range, is because you're also throwing grenades, right? But the problem with that, of course, is that, well, just because I'm an 8 doesn't mean I'm going to be a 16 for grenades. You know what I mean? As opposed to I'm a 4, now I'm only an 8 for grenades. I mean, I guess so, because usually the gunfire factors are related to the training level of the troops, and maybe they just don't throw grenades as well. I don't know. Again, I'm making stuff up as to the reason why that's the thing. But I think sorry, Evan, but I think the problem, or the effect is going to be that you're not going to close as often, right? You're going to have firefights as opposed to I'm going to close for melee, because as soon as you try to close for melee, you're going to get lit up by a double firepower attack. So I think it's going to change the tactics in the game, which could be good, could be bad. I don't know, because we haven't played enough yet. I haven't played at all, really, other than pushing some counters around. So. Thoughts, reactions?
Yeah, that's one question. Well, okay, I'll have my reaction, but first, kind of just an observation about ATS in general. I'm very curious. I'll use his name because he's a designer. Carl Fung was talking on his blog a long time ago about ASL. We can talk about ASL. We're talking about double firepower at point range. So that's truly, instead of grenade attacks, that feels like very ASL. But so he was talking about the composition of squads, and is this the American squads, are they realistic or not? And well, of course that started a bunch of people making a ruckus. But I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't think.
For the record, none of these games are realistic.
Right.
Continue. That's a whole other podcast.
That's also what Joe said.
Right. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Well, I've got a whole article ready for that.
Nice.
Point, so
awesome.
It'll happen. But yeah, I mean, in terms of realism, at least you're trying to take into account different factors, and to what degree is it? Some the ASLers seem to think that it was just the weapons, like you're just taking the weapons into account. I know that's not the case for ATS, because you can imagine these are pretty much the same squads, but one has much higher GF than the other, and then surely it's attributed to training, because they tend to be the 8 and 9 morale squads.
Correct.
So I'm very curious, and I would be very curious to know what breakdown is training, what breakdown is like the specific weapons. The guys, toting them, since they're different squad sizes.
No, yeah, I hear it. And I think, and Ray probably has that information, right, of how it's spoken down. But that's exactly what it is. That's why, an 859 is, and so that's why you'll see, like in ATS, there's a 1944 squad, a 1945 squad, a 1940 squad, a 1941 version of the squad, and different. Especially in the Commonwealth, different nationalities within the Commonwealth might have different squad representations, and it's all training, weaponry, doctrine, all that kind of stuff, kind of wrapped up in that value, in all those values of gunfire, range, and morale. So, but what the magic is under that, I have no idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I were that geek that knows like all the specific squad compositions and their weapons and their size, and, from all the different branches of the different military, maybe I'm sure someone who's not me could work backwards and figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, to respond to, I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead.
No, continue, please.
No, okay. Well, I was gonna respond to. I'm a little bit. So you raise a good point. I'm a little bit more leery of the of losing grenade attacks, because I don't know. I thought they were fun. Like, you have this kind of interesting decision about, okay, so do I shoot and then try and infiltrate, or do I save my shot so I can use grenade attacks, or does that not matter anyways because it's going to be a melee? And it gives some guys who are kind of normally pretty sucky. If you got 3 SP unit, they're getting that that nice 8 shot. So
right.
So I thought there was like an interesting kind of decision mix between those and the interplay there.
But I think, to your point, but I think that was almost a false. It's one of the things that I've always questioned in the 4.x rules is just because I fired, I can't throw grenades. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? If I can rush 50 meters, why can't I throw grenades, right? And so that's why I kind of like this. I get it. And that's why I'm making the assumption that that's what it's making up for. It's making up for the fact that the doubled fire, that I don't do grenade attacks. The grenades are being thrown at the same time I'm firing. That's why my fire is double, right? And again, that's an assumption. It's probably a good one, if I do say so myself. But to your point, yeah, it's removing some of the decision making, but it's changing the decision making a lot, right? And that's why I was saying it's going to change your tactics, because before you might be a little bit more willing to run up on a guy because he's a 4 strength squad, and the fire's not going to be that great. Well, now he's going to be an 8. That's a pretty significant change, right? So you may not want to get that close and try to do that. You might wait until he breaks before you try to assault him, right? So I don't know. That's why I said I was more of a caveat of I think I like the idea, but I'm kind of holding out to see how does it work out. How does it change the tactics in the game before I really come down one way or the other.
Right. No, and that's what I was going to say. Is I hadn't considered that. And I think that's a good point. That it does make, like you said, it makes the decisions different rather than not necessarily less decisions, but you have to think in a different way. And I do think having close assaults be scarier is good, because, or having guys be adjacent be scarier is good, because we haven't really touched on it much. But one of the big changes is to the morale rules. And one of the changes is that units that surrender, so either if they break twice, or if they break within an MSR of an enemy unit and there's no leader, they just disappear.
They're gone.
There's no surrendering coming back. They're gone.
Yeah,
it's really scary.
I marked that under the bad because I don't. I'm not sure what that's modeling, right? And it goes back to what we were just saying. It's going to force a change in tactics. So it does go hand in hand with the double firepower. I think you're not going to close as often. You're not going to want to be within MSR range of enemy units that often for that reason, right? So I don't know if one's trying to force the other, kind of a deal, right? But I think that is a huge. It's such a small change, but it's a huge change in the way people will play the game. I think
it changes the risk reward.
Absolutely.
It makes it more riskier, but the reward might be greater as well. So
potentially.
And the other thing with the morale rules is that it's the top unit with the highest morale gets done first, and if it passes, it's not like you have to go down and do everything.
Now that change I do like, but
I agree. I think that's a good change. Because it really does make a difference.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, it's going to speed up the game, right? I'm not. I have five counters in X. I only have to. If I pass with the first dude, I can stop. Right. So. Yeah, I actually counted that as a good one. So just to flesh that out a little bit, it's what Tony was saying is that the morale checks are only taken on the units. Well, they're only taken on units which actually took casualties. Right, not everybody in the X. You had to take a casualty, and from that, it's taking the best morale order. And once one passes, you stop, and I like that.
Yeah, one of the other interesting things, and I actually had to look it up in the 4X rules, was the crossfire.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there, and I never read it, but here it is. It's like one of the first rules.
Right.
I was like,
right.
That's a cool rule.
Well, I mean,
it's so important. Come on.
Yeah, I think the problem is.
Don't you play with Crossfire all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I think just like in EVO, the problem is it just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
Right. I
mean, there was probably times it could have happened, and we just didn't realize it, and then just moved forward. Yeah.
Right. Because most of the time, most scenarios, one side's coming on one side of the map, and you're going. The other side's either already there or whatever. You very rarely get into situations where you're gonna get into a crossfire. So, it's. Don't get me wrong. I like the rule. I think it should be in there. It absolutely can be devastating, and it's trying to model the whole. I'm being attacked from the flank, where really I was oriented this way and now I'm taking fire from a different way. I get it. I like it. But, it just doesn't happen that often in most games.
Well, how many times are you going to have two units on the opposite flanks
That's my point. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the situation, and by the time you're doing that, you're probably destroying them anyways because you have
right.
2 units in there. So you're firing 2 units in there. So,
right.
But yeah, that was just one of those. I made a note. I'm like, crossfire ? And then I pulled up the PDF of the 4.0 rules, and I was or the 4-point rules, and I was like, crossfire. Oh my god, it's in here. I'm like, why did I know? I think it's a really fun, cool rule.
Right.
But like you said, the likelihood of it actually happening is like, finding a dinosaur now.
Yep. So.
But yeah, and the other thing is they're really pushing on the overhead counters. Don't really care about that.
As long as I can use my regular counters, I'm fine. But.
I will say that the Vogel, the Vogel or bust actually is a true starter kit.
Tony. Volga.
I said Volger, didn't I?
Vogel. Yeah. I don't know what Vogel is.
Vulgar.
Yeah, vulgar. It's the vulgar or bust.
Vulgar busty.
which that's Tony's porn movie, but.
oh God, that's out there now.
Yep.
Forever.
It's never going away. But no, it's actually truly a starter kit altogether. It's got counters that you can play the game with buying that one, unlike the hedgerows or bust.
Yeah, hedgerows or bust. Well, mine only came with Germans and some American tanks. I did not get any American
that was
counters.
What I came with.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I just used infantry counter, the regular ATS infantry counter. So it doesn't matter. But mostly because I didn't.
What is it? Classic ATS now?
Classic. Yes, it's classic ATS.
So. We have classic.
Well, yeah. So I mean, a couple of more good things just to kind of round this up. Right? Is I like that. So. Hexside movement is now a thing for personnel. Did I say bypass? Hello, ASL. Right?
I was going to raise that question because I thought you could do bypass.
It's an optional. Well, you can do hexside movement on a road.
Yep.
Right? So what this is saying though is you can do hexside movement anywhere, which is basically so ASL, and I haven't played ASL in years, but they had a vehicle bypass. I'm not sure they had it for infantry. I could be wrong on that one. Somebody will correct me, no doubt. But now infantry can also do that. So if you don't want to, if you come to a hex and there's a building in one hex on the left and woods on one hex on the right, you can actually go along the hex spine in the clear area that's depicted on the map, and you're doing hexside movement. And then there's a whole bunch of rules around having and quartering gunfire based on where your LOS to that hex side is, or whether it only touches one vertex or the other vertex. And that's fine. I get it. It's because you're only partially seen when you're moving through, right? But I like that because, one of the things we've always, I don't know always, but we complain and gripe about is that it's a 50-meter hex. I can't drive between those two buildings, really, or I can't walk between those two buildings. I have to pay 2 movement points to enter the building. I can't pay 1 movement point and enter the hex spine and go to the next hex. Give me a break, right? So I really like that change. I'm not sure on the details. I think those would probably need to be a little bit more refined. Like I was saying, there's halving and quartering based on LOS and stuff like that. But I think in the end it works out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But I like that change.
Yeah, that'll come up on the Discord as well. That was an optional rule where people putting up all their house rules and optional rules.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's a good one, yeah. Anything else? Anything good? Any bad? Any ugly? I got more.
Let's talk about. We got more.
I got
one that kind of fits in all 3 categories, maybe.
Uh-oh.
What do you guys think about the halting rules for vehicles?
So when you first started talking about I like the vehicle changes, I'm like, is he really talking about the halt rules? Because those are kind of a mess.
Yeah, they are.
So,
but there's some good in there.
I was going to say my caveat is I like the idea. I think they need to be explained a little more. Right, I think there's just not enough verbiage around how does this really work. If I'm stalling in order to get a better shot on the HPT, if I'm shooting on the HPT or the MHT, whichever that is, I like the idea. I'm just not. It's not super clear how it works. I mean, I think again, it's one of those things like how are you supposed to take the shot? You can suss it out. I think more words need to be in there.
Okay. Well, and a big caveat: I haven't actually played it, so maybe this is me just spouting off BS. But I mean, when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think do that. But that could be wrong when I actually have to do it in real life.
The idea is definitely a positive because you may want to continue movement, but you don't want to. Why would you take a +5 or whatever it is? It's going to be some sort of modifier that actually affects it a little bit more, harshly. But if it's taking a little less, I like that. I definitely like that idea because then you don't have to stop. You don't have to worry. You can keep moving or be.
Right. Well, but the problem is it's all based on how far you stall, or not how far. How many movement points you spend stalling, how far you're going to move, and then it's just. Yeah.
It's a little too fiddly because, for example, the second, like 2 of the levels are almost the same thing. It's just one is a quarter and one is a half rate of fire.
Right.
It's like too much.
Right.
The one I was like, go ahead.
I was saying, how do you cleanly? I mean, granted, you have to use the multiple rates of fire. So Sherman has a 4. Great. That's easy to quarter. Easy to have, right? It's an even number. But, what if my initial rate of fire, and I'm making this shit up, right? What if my initial rate of fire is 5? And I think it says round fraction sound, but I can't even remember. But it feels artificial. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's a little too, the quarter. Anytime you get into quartering, it feels a little bit iffy because the numbers are going to work. Not going to make there's the same thing with vehicle machine guns can be quartered in half.
Yes.
And I'm like,
right. Well,
most circumstances it doesn't change anything because it's still you're still going to breaks on the table though.
And did you notice they all have different ranges now?
Oh, they all have different ranges.
Yeah, CMG, BMG, AAMG, they all have their own ranges. I think they're set by rule, but I'm almost positive that it changes on the chart as well. But anyway, yeah. Well, but to your point on the stalling rules too, is that there's also this shoot and scoot idea, which I categorize as bad. If it's not really super well defined, my assumption is that you fire with no assault moving modifiers and then move. I'm like, okay, but that seems like you're getting to eat the cake and the icing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So how does that work? Do you know you should at least lose half of your movement? I don't know. So how does that? And then to your point, how does that play in with the stalling? Because aren't you really isn't that just kind of a form of stalling? Right. I'm taking the shot and then I'm getting a half or less of my movement. So yeah,
not consistent.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. The one I did like, I thought the long halt was the one that made the most sense because that's
right.
Let's see here. That's if you move, I think at least over half or at least half of your movement points to stall or whatever,
right? And
then you stop, and then you get your full rate of fire. You get
right.
And it's just have a minor like a plus 10 DRM.
I think it's the other way. You move less than half, and you spend the others as a long haul, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have to stop. And the reason I like that is it feels weird sometimes. You're like, well, if you have a really fast vehicle that has 8 movement points for assault move, and you're like, I just want to move this 1 hex, clear hex, 1 MP, and fire. It's like, really, that's a +5 on my shot for assault fire.
Exactly.
Sometimes that feels a little bit iffy. So, yeah, like you said, I think the idea is good. Maybe the execution's a little too fiddly.
Yeah, but I hear you.
We'll find out.
Right. So here's a good one I do like. I like the push your luck for desperation fire. What I don't like about the desperation fire is that it F kills the machine gun. I think it should just be jammed. So the optional jamming rules in 4.x.
You roll 2 die and if they're
right. So desperation fire is you've fired all the rate of fire in a machine gun. If somebody moves in that machine gun's LOS and spotting range, you can still shoot as long as you roll a die. I think it was a D8. I have to go back and check the rules. I think it's a D8 less than or equal to
Rate of fire.
Rate of fire, it can fire again. So I think that keeps your opponent honest a little bit, right? When moving in front of a machine gun. But I don't like I said, I don't like the F kill result. I think it should just be jammed. Because what that's what that's modeling is, I overheated the machine gun, I'm jammed, or I need to swap the barrel, so I'm going to be out of commission until I can get that done. You know what I mean? As opposed to it's just dead.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, I like the idea behind it, right? Because I've seen many many games where, I'm done with my ROF, and so now you're just moving willy-nilly in front of me, and that's just not. It doesn't really model the situation the way I think it should be. Although the caveat to that is, if you really wanted to stop that guy moving, you should put a fire lane. Fire lane is ASL speak. You should put grazing fire down, right? Yep. So it's 6 and 1/2 dozen. At the end of the day, I think I like it in that term. So if you didn't do grazing fire, this is a way to kind of get it, right? Mm-hmm. At the risk of food buying your machine gun. So I kind of like that.
Well, I was just listening in an audiobook, a World War II audiobook about the MG34, I think it was, and how it could fire a ton of shots, but it overheated so fast. Mm-hmm. They couldn't fire the actual, the amount, because the barrel would get just way too hot, and basically the accuracy was unattainable. So I kind of get the idea of what you're saying. You're like, you kind of pushed it really fast, but they had teams that actually, changed out the barrels.
Oh yeah.
So maybe you get maybe one turn, it's off.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of commission for a turn.
Right.
Or like you said with the jammed rules, where you roll to do that. Yeah.
So our M60, the US M60. Well, I had to carry that damn thing around, but it came with a bag, and in that bag was a spare barrel and also some asbestos gloves, right?
Oh yeah.
I should probably sue.
Always got lost.
Uncle Sam, right? Because once you overheated the barrel, you had to take the gloves, you had to grab that hot ass barrel, unscrew it, swap it out with a new barrel and put it in and get it. But that takes time, which is modeled by the jamming rules, right? So.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that about the losing the gloves. They said that the Germans never used the gloves. They hardly ever used the gloves.
Right.
I think they'd kind of just tossed it on the ground and put the new one in.
Right. Well, but I mean, you grab that hot ass barrel and you're done. So. All right. I think we beat it up pretty good. I would like to say one thing. There we are. I would like to say one thing. The OBA rules, I like them because they're much simpler. However, you roll a 1d10 plus a 1d8, which gives you a result of 2 to 18, but the chart is 1 to 17. That's ugly.
Yeah, that should be. I'm assuming it's supposed to be 2 to 18.
I do too, and I that is the one feedback I did send to Ray, because I'm like, look, dude, you got to fix this because it's just absolutely wrong. But
well, I was looking at that. I was like, it's 1 to 17, and I didn't even think that the lowest you could get would be at 2. I didn't even think about that. I'm like, where's the 18? Right. I didn't think that. So now that you mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
Exactly. So I know, whatever.
Well, the problem is that every number now is wrong by 1. You have to remember that every time you have to add 1 to each of the numbers to get the right the right hex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
doable.
So wrap up. Let's go around. A wrap up on EVO, on the hot take of what do you just an overall impression of the two products we have: Hedgerows or bust, Volga or bust, Volga or bust. What do you think, Tony? Go.
I think there's good ideas in there, and I'm actually looking forward to kind of busting it out and playing through those rules to figure out, to look at it. The interesting thing is, other than the Hedgerows, the Volga doesn't have any vehicles, so you can't even try the vehicle rules out with them. But I definitely look forward to putting some counters on and playing a couple of scenarios out, and maybe playing them a couple times to see how these work out. I'm hopeless. I'm hopeless.
You are hopeless.
I am hopefully optimistic about it.
Evan, what do you got?
There's a lot of adjectives. Hopefully optimistic.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of interesting stuff, as Tony said, going on here. It seems like the game is kind of trying to smooth out some of like the time issues or zoom in more on them. Like the thing about not that the movement modifiers don't carry over past the time when the unit's moving, and vehicles. I think one thing we didn't talk about that I thought was good, because it's a natural change, was that vehicles can, instead of having to pay for each vertex, if they move a hex, they can automatically, for free, rotate one vertex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's good. I think it's good from the standpoint of like a game. It's much easier to move your vehicle that way.
Right.
Because whenever I'm playing, like, I start moving it as if it were like an infantry unit, and I'm like, oh no, I have to take into account the turns, and then to keep track of that in my head, move the counter. So it feels more natural. But the end result is, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but the end result is that vehicles can move farther, they can transport more units more easily, as we talked about. Vehicle weapons, much higher rate of fire. You're getting much more shots potentially. So it's kind of like smoothing out all these time issues. Well, I don't know if they're issues, but or zooming in more on them. And whether that I'm excited to, as Tony said, I'm excited to try it out for sure. If it all works out or not. It's hard to tell how much of it's a cohesive system, how much of it is just things being tested out, how much of it is things that's retrofitting 4X. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think some stuff we can definitely toy around with. You could just drop the casualty table in with the D100. We can just start playing with that right now, and it'd be the same thing, but with just some more interesting results, which I think is definitely a good thing. And some of the other rules, like the generalized text side movement and just little things in there, I think you could just drop in and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I wanted this the whole time, and now we have a nice formalized rule for it, so let's play with it. And I think about other stuff, like the morale system is it's its own beast. Yeah. Will it work or not? Does it work with the rest of the rules? You have to play. To find out. It feels like, I don't know. It feels iffy, but time will tell.
Yeah,
so that's what I got.
I say I'm with you, Evan, on that particular piece of it. It feels to me like it's a test bed, right? And I'd much rather it be referred to as, hey, these are potential rules that will go into ATS rule version 5, right? As opposed to, this is this whole new thing and blah, 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 whatever. And I get it. I mean, that's 6 and 1 half times the other, because if you're going to go to a D100 or 2D10, whatever, that's kind of a bigger change. And yeah, you might want to, call it something else or whatever. I get that. But I think at the end of the day, and I think you might have said it earlier, Evan, is that it feels like a bunch of house rules that are being tested out of, hey, if we added this in, it's going to make the experience better, and let's just try that out. But it feels like it's kind of tacked on as opposed to a deliberate plan of let's figure this out and figure out how we can make this a true evolution of the rules, as opposed to just I'm throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And that said, I even though we talked about a lot of the bad and the ugly, right? I like a lot of the things in there. There's a lot I think that would add to an ATS 4.x version. You can pick and choose some things out of EVO, quite a few of them, and tack them right on and have a blast playing. But to your earlier point too, Evan, and I think you, Tony, is like, I don't know how it's going to change the game though. So I think it needs some testing and some, I don't want to use balancing, but some, if it changes the tactics enough, then will that cascade into other changes to account for that, right? So that's it.
Okay.
Sounds like we have to play some EVO.
Right.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So I think we really hashed out a lot of our initial impressions, and so probably down the road or so we'll do another kind of episode where, okay, we've played some scenarios, here's kind of a different take on this, and was our initial impressions accurate or not? So I think that's kind of the next part for that. So,
Yeah, maybe we'll get a playthrough with, we'll use the regular counters in ATS or in VATS and just play using the EVO rules, and we'll show you how it works.
Yep, definitely. Sounds good. Well, any last thoughts, you guys, before we end this up?
I have one last thought.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Tony, what is your porn star name?
Wow.
That will be for another topic.
Nice.
And on that
That's a whole new meaning to Tony's board life. Just saying.
Well, all I know is I'm waiting for Utah to come in next week. So.
Oh yeah, you said you ordered that. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, send us a pic of the map, and so we can all drool over it.
Right, and then decide if we want to order it. No, actually, better is Tony do a Battlefield walk-around video of that module.
Oh yeah,
that's actually on the plan. I'll take some pictures and let you guys drool over it too, but I'll definitely do a Battlefield walk-around on that.
Cool.
For sure.
Awesome.
Okay, with that, I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, well, thank you. And we'll talk to you guys next time.